changes, or there were restructuring of various institutions of government. For example, the creation of the 3 roads authorities, which again I participated in as an expert. We were 2 consultants who worked on that process.
This is Kenya National Highways Authority, Kenya Urban Roads Authority,
and the Kenya Rural Roads Authority. Of course, it is, I would call it a unique institutional arrangement that is not similar in many countries in Africa. And the reason why we did structure them that way was that we wanted specific attention to be given to national highways without being overridden by the rural roads. And on coming to rural roads, which actually support agricultural production, we again needed to provide for a proper development and maintenance program for rural roads. And many a times before that time, urban roads used to suffer a lot, because whenever there was a hue and cry, about roads in the rural areas and the national highways, then the urban roads were left more or less orphaned. So that's why we also set up the Kenya Urban Roads Authority, so that we have a dedicated attention. So the policy paper, the National Integrated Transport Policy that was done, therefore, did appreciate that we needed to integrate the national economy using infrastructure. And we equally appreciated that many parts of the country were actually lacking in highways. Look at what we were before. Just the Mombasa Road, going all the way to the border with Uganda, Tanzania, and then beyond that we have enclaves going into Mount Kenya region, and that's all. And so it meant that a huge part of this country was actually lacking in infrastructure. Close to 70% of the country needed to be opened up. And there was actually a chapter that was talking about opening up the second transport corridor that now became the Lapsset corridor.
The Lapsset corridor.
So, and there were also a number of studies that were undertaken. For example, the expressway that is now being built. Sometimes I see people making comments not knowing that the government had already set in motion plans to put up this. It did not just drop from the sky. Yeah. In fact, it ought to have been completed by the year 2012 if the World Bank did not.
And by then it was called the Nairobi Viaduct.
Yeah, it was called the Nairobi Viaduct. And I remember we went on mission to Washington to have discussions with the World Bank, because at that time it was supposed to be constructed by SBI and Strabag AC. And but at that time, the World Bank advised that that contract needed to be stopped because they were the financiers. So this time around, then the government has found now another avenue how to put it up, and it's much needed. The bypasses, again, like the southern bypass was part of that project. But when the World Bank stopped the project, because they were the ones to fund it, because they had issues with the, what we call...
The contractor.
With the contractor. The government therefore found it fit to quickly put up the southern bypass without waiting for it to be done. Otherwise, maybe it's now when we could have been doing the southern bypass as we are doing the...
And the southern bypass, the whole region was to try and divert traffic that was on its way to Nakuru, Naivasha and all that, to divert it outside the city center.
Correct.
Because the whole place was becoming clogged up.
Absolutely. And also, if you are, let's say you are coming from a place like Kikuyu, or you're coming from Karen or any other place, you don't have to come into town for you to get your way to the airport. Or you don't have to go all the way to Nyayo Stadium for you to start diverting towards the airport. You just need to get a route out straight away. So that is what these bypasses have been doing. And actually these bypasses were planned all the way back in 1970s, early 70s. And even land was acquired then, yes, for the bypasses. But it did take quite a long time to deliver them. But now
until 2015, 2014 thereabouts.
Yes.
The document that you are talking about, the National Integrated, the National Transport Integrated Master Plan of 2003-2004.
Yes.
It also talked about, the expansion of various roads, highways, airports, and ports. And one of the key projects that was supposed to be undertaken was the expansion of Jomo Kenyatta International Airport to increase capacity to about 12 million. million. Currently, we are talking about 8 million. And one of the projects that was supposed to be undertaken was the Greenfield Terminal.
Correct.
We know that project has been put on hold because of various reasons. I want to hear from you. So when such projects, have been put on hold, how is it likely to impact that critical document?
What I would like to say is that definitely putting it on hold does not mean that it will never be built. And actually, if you draw lines in comparing with what Ethiopia is doing, they came up
at Bola International Airport.
Yes, International Airport. And they came up with a whole new terminal. And it has really boosted business in Ethiopia.
It's almost actually snatching the pie from Nairobi.
Yes, and actually you've also seen this week we saw that Ethiopian Airlines is actually almost among the top 20 airlines
in the world.
Yeah, in terms of passenger capacity. Yeah. And it has beaten even many other non-airlines. Yes, and so basically that terminal was supposed to increase capacity and also create greater, opportunity for us to expand our airline business.
And also stamp JKIA as a regional aviation hub in Africa.
Correct. And it was also dealing with a number of other issues, particularly looking at matters that go with the separation of incoming passengers and outgoing passengers. And of course that meant that a lot of rejigging had to be done on the existing terminal. But of course we can also not avoid to appreciate that there is the terminal that was built with the support of the World Bank. This is the Terminal 1.
The Terminal A.
Yeah. So that capacity again did bring in a new value to the airport. Yes.
Kasuku, I know you're well traveled. And I know you have landed in some of the best airports in the world. Right. And I want to give you, an example of, for example, take, Cape Town International Airport in South Africa. Take, for example, the Cairo International Airport in Egypt. Quite modern, when you look at them. And these are the airports that Jomo Kenyatta International Airport was supposed to compete, or is supposed to compete with. When you even go closer here to Ethiopia, Bola International Airport, a whole new terminal. The Kigali International Airport, a whole new terminal. Quite new and modern, and encompassing green aspects in modern day infrastructure. Is it proper to say that JKIA is somehow lagging behind in catching up with the latest technology and, of course, trying to compete with these emerging aviation hubs?
In fact, I would even want to increase the number of examples. If you go to South Korea and you look at the Incheon International Airport, that is a whole new hub. If you go to Dubai, they have that new, the Dubai.
Those are extremes, actually. You're comparing extremes. I mean,
if you go to countries like even Iran, they have the Khamenei,
Ayatollah Khamenei,
international airport, and among many others. And what is happening is that people, governments or the aviation sector is taking new shapes, and every part of the globe is trying to create a new hubbing effect, taking advantage of new technologies, even in terms of even just lighting, even in terms of taking care of issues of security, creating new value and comfort and services in airports. I wouldn't say that we are lagging so much behind because we have that new small, Terminal 1A. At least it has brought in some new value. If you go in there, it is much better than what did, what burnt down. But we do expect that the right decisions will be made, or some decisions will be made going forward on how to create a new, a new sensation, a new hubbing effect, and new services, and therefore attract even new businesses that also go with the current airport configurations. Because actually an airport is also a hub of business, and you find a lot of people also doing a lot of other businesses at the airport. Yes.
If we delay so much, or we take too much time in developing JKIA as an aviation hub, not only for the region but for Africa, what is likely to happen to the aviation industry in Kenya and in the region?
Definitely, as we've rightly said, that there is a lot of competition that is coming up. Actually, everything that is being driven at the moment, whether you look at what Ethiopia is developing, what Rwanda is developing, it is actually creating that competitiveness in the developments that they are doing. Because, you know, business is not just the preserve of one specific country, but other countries also want to bite the same pie that you are also having, and that is why they are putting up those kind of infrastructures and services. So what we can say is that we actually need to move to that next level. Yes.
It is proper to say that these new airports that have been developed in Africa, and there are many actually, they have somehow grabbed the shine of JKIA. How do we regain our status as a regional aviation giant, not only on the eastern seaboard of Africa, but in the east, central, and of course somehow southern part of Africa?
Definitely that also goes with the growth of the airline services. We need maybe to revamp our KQ brand, because if you look at what Ethiopia is doing, definitely they have gone into strengthening the competitiveness of their airline. So because it's not just the airport alone that will bring in the business, or that will attract the hubbing effect, or will strengthen the hubbing effect. It is, they are concomitant, the airport infrastructure and the airline services. So we have therefore to strengthen our connectivity to many parts of the continent and other parts of the world. And if you look at like what Dubai does, I mean what Emirates does, Emirates takes you to Dubai whenever you want to go to any part of the world.
Yeah.
Like, let's say you want to go to the US, they have first of all take you to Dubai. Now then from there, you connect now to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And it is that kind of creating the hub effect. And that's also what Ethiopian airlines are also doing. You've seen, they take you whenever, even if you are leaving South Africa and you want to go to any other part of the world, they first of all take you to Addis Ababa. From Addis Ababa, they now disperse.
Yes, true.
And when you are coming back, you come back into that hub again, and then again you get your services out.
I want to take you back to around 10 years ago, 10, 8, 9 years ago. Anybody who was landing at JKIA, the airline that dominated the ground was KQ.
Correct.
Anybody who is landing at Bola International Airport, majority of the aircraft that you see are Ethiopian Airlines.
Yes.
You go to London Airport, the majority of the aircraft that you see on the ground are British Airways.
Correct.
The same with LaGuardia Airport. You see a lot of American Airlines, Delta and so much. But these days, when you are landing at JKIA, this is no longer the case. How do we, I know there are a lot of efforts behind the scenes being done.
Correct.
To revamp and to help our national carrier Kenya Airways, you know, to get on its feet and compete with other emerging carriers. But how do we accelerate this progress? Because time is not on our side.
Absolutely. Time is not on our side, and the business cake doesn't wait. In fact, when it's on the table, each and every country comes with its own knife. Yeah, you are not the one who divide for them. So it therefore means that we must now move to get our acts together and make sure that even though business is now being shared by many other countries, you've seen Rwanda now having their airline, Tanzania is
which is growing very fast, actually.
Growing very fast.
Yeah.
And Tanzania is also revamping its airline industry. And you've seen that they are actually also now trying to use that same hubbing effect. You've seen Uganda has been growing, and actually a lot of passengers, maybe a number of passengers maybe who used to pass through Nairobi now fly directly to Entebbe. Ethiopia, the same.
And actually Entebbe is also under construction.
Yeah, it's under construction.
It is being expanded.
Yes. And the same is happening to Ethiopia, among many others. So what we have to do is that we must continue to strengthen our competitive edge by making sure that we put in place the right infrastructure. At the same time, we strengthen our service provision, the airline service, and make sure that we continue to strengthen our network and competitiveness within the continent and around the world.
Look, all the major airports in the world, they have next to them a conventional center that can host thousands of delegates for meetings.
Correct.
They have hotels. I know there was a plan back in the 2008, 2009, to establish an international convention center next to Jomo Kenyatta International Airport that was supposed to have various amenities. We all know the controversy that surrounded that whole project, and it was stopped. But other countries have not stopped. Look, Kigali has just completed the construction of Kigali International Convention Center, which is actually taking a lot of MICE meetings to Rwanda. Bola International Airport is also having a brand new state-of-the-art convention center and hotels. So is Cape Town International Airport. So is Johannesburg International Airport. So is Cairo International Airport. The only airport that is missing out is JKIA. How do we accelerate our development of aviation sector in this country?
Yes, in fact, the configuration that we are having in Nairobi is actually interesting and needs to be looked at differently, because we have like the KICC, which is actually a convention center somehow, and then supported by the hotels in town and being put up in different parts of this town. And you will actually recall that the number of hotels have actually gone up very much. And that's why we need to take advantage of the unique situation that we are having. Because actually, conferencing is indeed also a kind of business generator. And when you integrate it with the city, with the city structure, then you end up maybe creating a sense of value and allowing that conference tourism to bring in new business into the town. So what we have to do therefore is that, for example, now we are having the expressway. You remember coming from JKIA, sometimes you could even take 3 hours in a jam there. I mean, if you are a visitor and you're coming to town, and then you end up spending 3 hours, which is more or less somebody leaving Dubai and coming here.
It's 5 hours.
5 hours. So you spend a better part of that journey in the jam, So we need, therefore, to strengthen our accessibility capabilities in the city, so that we can create an integrated framework of conferencing and city business, so that even the people who come to for conferences also partake in improving our business environment within the city. They do shopping, they enjoy themselves in restaurants. I mean, they have quite a wide variety to enjoy from. And they also interact with the people. That's part of what actually conferencing also brings out. And you can see people who usually come to Kenya, they go back remembering some few things. Nyama choma. You go to Carnival and you have serious nyama choma. You come into the city and you are taken to Nairobi National Park. The city with a national park within its boundaries.
The only one in the world.
The only one in the world. I mean, these are unique, and competitive niches that we need to catch some kind of business from. Or we need to develop business around them. So actually, sometimes just having a convention center outside the city, or let's say at the airport, might not even just be the only thing of how to attract conferencing business. But we need to find out how to intertwine our unique form, our unique structure, our unique services, and our unique environment with the conferencing business. And we can actually develop it much stronger because we have many hotels that are now being brought up. And it is that movement, let's say, between the conference center and to the hotels that also creates the business in movement, in moving people. And that also creates value in traveling for a conference. Look at Santon.
In Johannesburg.
In Johannesburg. The International Convention Center that has been built there is actually the one that is driving the Santon business environment. And whenever there are conferences taking place there, all the hotels within Santon are actually highly booked.
And Greater Johannesburg.
Yeah, and Greater Johannesburg. And the fact that it is slightly outside the main Joburg because it was created as a new business hub, it is actually one of the major conferencing centers in Joburg. And actually it is the heartbeat of conferencing in Joburg. And it has become like a city on its own.
It's a city within a city.
Yeah, it's a city within a city. And that is also driving business. So you see, it's not like next to the airport or something like that. But it's a city within a city, but strongly pegged on conferencing. And
with a very efficient railway transport system.
Correct.
In the name of Gautrain.
Yes, Gautrain, yes. And that is why I'm saying our JKIA can be there. We can even have another green terminal, whether at JKIA or we take it towards Konza City, so that the movement, once movement is efficient, once accessibility is high, people don't mind how long they travel. I mean, how long the distance is between the airport and the conferencing facility. Look at Incheon International Airport.
In South Korea.
Yeah, in South Korea. It's over 120 kilometers away from Seoul. But Seoul is the soul of conferencing. When I say Seoul, I don't know whether I should say it. But Seoul is indeed the soul of conferencing. But Incheon International Airport has created a new value, new capacities, new businesses. And you can also find that Incheon itself is a special economic zone. There are industrial parks, there are business parks, office parks, name it. There are residential hubs. And that has also created a city next to a city or within a city framework. Seoul and Incheon. And that has created great impetus for South Korea.
You see, what has always baffled me is that, as a country, we do not lack expertise in terms of, developing this kind of master plans, in terms of infrastructure development. And you're giving a very good example. Let me take, my first time to land at Incheon International Airport, I was blown off. The level of infrastructure development, you're talking about underground trains.
Correct.
You're talking about expressways that takes you less than 30 minutes to get to Seoul City Center. You're also talking about you can also use a ship.
Correct.
That will take you all the way to Seoul. How comes we have not seen for all this time, and we have done a lot of benchmarking missions, to some of these countries? How comes we have not seen it fit as well to develop another city outside Nairobi, maybe Naivasha, maybe Machakos, maybe Thika, so that we try to decongest the city of Nairobi? Because sincerely speaking and honestly speaking, the city of Nairobi is full to the brim.
What I can say is that you see the framework of development in Kenya is a lot led by private sector, business tastes. If I can draw a parallel with Malaysia, the Malaysian government, other than having their usual headquarters, they decided to put up Putrajaya as a new city, and Putrajaya has been made the seat of government. And by being the seat of government, business has also followed. But it is the government of Malaysia that has actually built Putrajaya. And then private sector has followed. We can say that in Kenya, and particularly around Nairobi, we can say that we've seen the private sector actually driving the agenda of putting up the kind of cities or sub-cities that you are talking about. We've seen Tatu City, we've seen, I think there is Northlands. There are many other sub-cities that are being put up.
Konza City.
Konza City, now that's now government-driven. And maybe we need to find out, and not even just finding out, because we know maybe why private sector might be slow in getting there. But as a government, we need to find out, just like to keep ourselves away from COVID, we just get a vaccine. The vaccine is very little, but it actually aids the entire big body to survive. So we need to find out which vaccine, development vaccine, do we need to inject around Konza, other than just the office, other than just offering land. There are some things that we now need to start to open our eyes to start to put up around Konza. Number one, we have a beautiful standard gauge railway. Then we have something like, let's say, the Railway Logistics Center. Maybe we could have moved it to Konza because there's enough space there. It's bigger than the Wienerland container terminal that we have here. So that
are you talking about the railway city that is planned in next to the to the railway station?
Yeah, the railway city, or let's say just the logistics center. Let's say if instead of let's say squeezing the inland container depot where it is, we could have, let's say, built up a bigger one that can handle more business, let's say around Konza City. From there, then we can do the Greater Southern bypass that now goes through, that doesn't come into town, that goes through on the other side of the national park, goes through places around Rongai, and connects, with the road going to Nakuru and beyond at a different stage. That could have also enabled us to start to inject some value there. And of course, the SGR passes near there. So that could be one idea. Another thing is the Greenfield terminal could have been taken there.
Sylvester, allow me to step on your shoes because we want to take a short break. We are coming back with option number 2. And of course, there are also some questions around option number 1.
Yes.
Hold your thoughts. We're having a great discussion here around how to develop infrastructural projects here in Kenya, and of course how to accelerate the rate at which we are developing this project. This is Newscheck live from Broadcasting House. O'Brien Kimani is my name. We're taking a short break and thereafter we are back with more. Stay right here. Great.
We need...
Chini ya uongozi wa Rais Uhuru Kenyatta, serikali kuu imewekeza kwenye miradi tofauti ya maendeleo katika kaunti mbalimbali ambayo imeleta manufaa mengi kwa wakazi wa mashinani. Wiki hii kwenye Project 254,
in our different capacities, we must all work closely to tackle any challenges standing in the way of a better Kenya for our people.
Kabla port ijagunduliwa vizuri, ijaanza vizuri, kazi ilikuwa nadra, lakini venye port ilikuwa revived, venye the president alirevive port, tukaanza kuona opportunities.
Kifika Aero Junction tulikuwa na hapo na maburutano ya barabara, na tunaona kama saa hizi lami iko kabisa mpaka nje.
Quiero amarte de una forma diferente, de otro modo.
Ask her where she was the day when her agent died. Expose her to doubt and let's see her reaction. Then you will realize if what Eloisa and I were thinking is crazy or not.
I found the memory card from Gustavo's camera.
Don't worry about it. The lawyer is posting his bail. Sure, that's correct. Because I'm the son that you never wanted. And that's why he never bothered to know me, Mom. But you know what? Don't buy the car. It's okay.
Because your wife was my mother's murderer, that's why. And that's the truth.
Quiero amarte de una forma diferente, de otro modo, nunca igual al de otra gente.
Hayawi huwa mbiu ya mgambo imelia, na kwa kawaida ikilia kuna jambo.
Mgambo uliopo hapa ni rumba, rumba kavacha, odemba na sukus.
Tutakupromoshea midundo motomoto ya Afrika, iwe kutoka kaskazini, kusini, magharibi na hata mashariki.
Rumba is here in your living room.
Na popote ulipo.
This is Bridge of Congo.
Nzambe ya sambe la kati, ako sambe la nani.
Right here on KBC Channel 1. We.
From my father's house to the land I will show you. Oh God, give me the strength to do what I must.
Abraham, do not harm your child. For now I know that you fear God, seeing that you've not withheld your son.
What does this number mean to you? A pack leader? A winner? Or just a number? To us, it means freshness, boldness, vibrancy and heritage. That's why at KBC Channel 1, we make it easier for you to pop up your family entertainment to a fresh, exciting and colorful bouquet.
Welcome back. You're watching Channel 1, and of course our discussion is around infrastructure, and we are tracking the progress of various infrastructural projects. Talk about airports, ports, highways, and many other things. And we are doing this with the help of Sylvester Kasuku, the immediate former CEO of LAPSET, and of course a former infrastructure secretary in the office of the Prime Minister. He's also an infrastructure and transport expert. And so you would imagine that he comes with a very serious technical know-how on some of these issues. Before we went for the break, we were discussing option number 2 on how to help revive Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, to bring in more business, and of course to make Nairobi the aviation hub of Africa. And you are giving us option number 2.
Yes, definitely. We were relating this with some of the projects like the Konza City. And saying that maybe we need to have certain strategic investments around it for it to start to pick up very quickly. And you know that the comfort that a lot of investors find, particularly within the city center, let's say you are talking about stretches of Upper Hill, Westlands, among many others, including the CBD. And a lot of investments are already here, and a lot of government services are already here. So you find that if you therefore want to create some impetus in creating business or activities around that particular city investment, then you need to take some of the services there or around there. like let's say the railway logistics center. You need to take maybe if you're building a new terminal, instead of squeezing it around somewhere, maybe you can create a new international hub there again that enables you therefore to do much bigger business there. So once you start having, let's say, people landing there, people doing logistics business there, then it starts to attract other investors now to come on board, so that they don't look like they are doing double investments within, or double location within Nairobi City.
You're talking about Konza, which is also another major project that is supposed to relieve a little bit of pressure from Nairobi, and of course create a new tech hub around there.
Correct.
Since the construction of these cities started back in the year 2009, when you go down there, are you convinced, and when you look at the progress that he has made so far, are you convinced that we are making progress at the right speed and in the right direction?
O'Brien, there are things that determine speed and direction. Number one is the resources required to put up the necessary basic infrastructure. Therefore, if you hadn't allocated enough resources for it, then definitely, if without roads, who will go and invest there if there are no roads? So it means that we have to complete putting up the required infrastructure for people now to get in. So I believe that is what is going on. Not I believe, I've seen, that's what is going on. And definitely, once the infrastructure is put up, then you'll start having, you start finding those interested parties starting to go there. And once you also create certain value, investments around it, that are spearheaded by government, that create a ripple effect for the other investments now to be done by private sector, then you find that that will attract the development going forward. Just like, I mean, you were among the first journalists that came to interview me in Lamu when we were at the beginning of starting the construction of Lamu Port. And that time it was just the sea and the bushes there. And you are asking me, so where is the port going to be? And I was explaining, pointing somewhere inside the water. Today,
in a forest.
Yeah. And today you can see that a port has been built in a place that was previously just water and bushes. And ships are now calling, they're starting. And the business is starting to gel. A lot of people, investors, service providers in the shipping business are already locating there. That starts to create, the impetus for business to grow. The infrastructures are being built. For example, roads connecting the port into the hinterland, and those that are connected to other countries. And this is actually now starting to create a new investment climate, a new investment interest. And I believe you know very well that Lamu is no longer the Lamu you used to know when you first visited.
I mean, it's
bustling with
different.
business. Even Lamu Island is bustling with business. People are rushing there to get space to put up a number of business premises. And you can find that the environment is becoming much, much more interesting.
We must appreciate this fact that, as a country, there's a lot of competing interests when it comes to resources, because Kenya, as it were, I mean, we are not aware of a nation whereby we have resources to do different things and multiple things at the same time. But you've brought in the issue of LAPSSET. Lamu Port, it's evident, it has managed to change the landscape of this area for the better. But I want us to talk about LAPSSET for a minute. Some of the projects also that have been completed include the construction of Isiolo Airport, but it's dead. What happened?
I think you haven't looked at it appropriately. One of the things that has affected aviation sector is mainly, particularly from last year, is the COVID issue. When movement became difficult, particularly by air or across borders, it has actually decreased, the volumes of business for the airline industry, and it has not even resumed properly. You've seen that people are not moving as much as they used to move. Now a lot of things are being done using the platforms or online platforms.
Yep.
Even conferences are being done online. And you remember that even in terms of TV interviews, there's even a time now you are just interviewing people from home.
Yep.
Yeah, because movement became a problem.
But well, to some extent, your point is valid, but it is an international airport. An international airport is supposed to serve the international market. Even before COVID, we've never had an international airline landing at Isiolo Airport. Even as we speak, we are yet to have airlines flying from Nairobi to Isiolo.
They were doing so, and actually
flying from Mombasa.
I wouldn't want to speak on behalf of the state because I think they can answer you best on that now. But what I know is that they hadn't completed some of the developments they were doing. I know that Kenya Airports Authority is actually undertaking a process to put in some of the required infrastructures, even in terms of runway length and the like. It has the international status, yes, but you need to also complete putting up some of the required infrastructure, and that's what they're doing. And I think maybe they can explain that much better than I've said, but I've given you a glimpse of it, that they are still at the stage of developing.
But it's not fully developed.
Yeah, so
it is a work in progress.
Yeah, it's work in progress. They need to complete that.
But Kasuku, you can't run away from this, because remember, Isiolo International Airport is a baby product of Alapset.
Yes, you will equally recall, O'Brien, you visited Lamu quite a number of times. As we were building the port, before ships could get enough space now to come and actually call the port properly, we were still doing construction works. Even, let's say, like even when berth number 1 became almost ready, but there are certain infrastructural works that needed to be completed now for ships to come, and now they are coming. The same way, Isiolo Airport will take
it will take shape.
Yeah, it will take shape. And you've seen that the road coming from Lamu going towards Isiolo is under construction.
Yeah.
The section between Lamu and Garissa is now under construction at a very high speed. And once those connectivities are done, and I did say that infrastructure connectivity is very key with regard to enhancing the service provision levels. So that will change quite a lot.
With the time.
With the time.
Let's talk about SGR. Quite a mega project. The business between Nairobi and Mombasa makes a lot of economic sense as we stand now. The whole plan was to push SGR from the port of Mombasa all the way to Uganda and to Democratic Republic of Congo. Right now we are stuck at Naivasha. Do you think SGR is having its intended impact?
Brian, what I can say is that when the railway was built by the Mzungu, or by the colonial masters, or the colonial government, people in Britain called it the Lunatic Express. They were saying that was a railway to nowhere, a railway to do nothing. I mean, O'Brien, the railway did demonstrate its fair contribution to the regional economy. And you've seen that development basically followed the railway line. And a lot of developments that have been done in Kenya are actually along the main transportation route from Mombasa, going all the way to the borders with our neighbors. So what has been done for the SGR so far, in my view, is fair. Because if you look at how SGR has transformed movement of people and goods between Mombasa and Nairobi, you wouldn't really doubt it. And globally, a lot of times it is said that railway on its own account shouldn't be counted as a business without looking at its contribution to the growth of the economy. It is the services that it provides to the economy that brings in the value of the infrastructure that is built. And again, looking at the efficiencies that this railway has already contributed, particularly between Mombasa and Nairobi. I mean, we can't doubt it. And this is something that should also be looked at in view of what the African continent is having as its development agenda going forward.
The Agenda 63.
Yeah, the AU Agenda 2063. One of the key principles is to integrate Africa. And in integrating Africa, there are key projects that must be undertaken. Number one, construction of railways. It is saying that the African continent requires to construct 32,000 kilometers of new railway by the year 2040. It needs to construct 37,000 kilometers of new roads by the year 2040. It needs to do electric power transmission. It needs to construct new ports to create a new added port capacity within the continent of 1.3 billion tons per year.
So 1.3 billion tons.
1.3 billion tons added capacity to existing ports in Africa. So when sometimes we are seen to be propagating the construction of the big push infrastructure, then people say, why are we constructing these big things? What are they going to bring?
They don't see the bigger picture.
The big picture is that infrastructure is not counted as a business unto its own self, but it is an injection into the economy, like a vaccine.
It is an enabler.
It is an enabler. Just like the vaccine enables you to build immunity, infrastructure enables you to now generate business, to do business more efficiently. And one of the greatest impediments to Africa's growth is actually the lack of integration infrastructure. If you want to go to DRC, let's say you want to go to the headquarters of DRC today, or you want to go to Central African Republic, and you have a car, you'll just find that you can't go. So what we need to do is that we must build this infrastructure that are integrating the continent. And the more we build this infrastructure, the more we open up new business areas, the more we create new investments, the more we create new opportunities. Like if you look at the value of that the Kenyan private sector brings into the economy, if we just continue in Africa the way we are without building this new integrating infrastructure, we end up stifling the potential of greater growth. But if, let's say, you can build roads and railways that traverse Africa, that enables you to move from Kenya and go, to, let's say, to West Africa by rail or by road, I mean, that is when now you create new value of investment.
And Sylvester, I mean, the whole point of investing in infrastructure is to have a ripple effect around investment.
Correct.
Is to enable investment in far-flung areas.
Correct.
Is to allow for investors to reach different counties in this country. We know Nairobi and Mombasa have been the manufacturing, the business, and the investment hubs for Kenya for the longest time. Now with all these infrastructural developments, from railways to new roads to airports, how comes the counties are yet to fly with these projects and initiate investment projects in their counties?
I can say that we are aware that most of these investments that are being undertaken now, some of them have just completed, let's say, their first phase of development, like if you count Lamu Port. A lot of roads that are, let's say, within northern Kenya, let's say if you talk about the ones that run along the Lapsset corridor, you see that they are under construction. Talking about SGR, we can see that SGR was just completed recently, and further infrastructure development to enable us to create a more interconnected network and a more efficient network are still ongoing. So we wouldn't say really that the county governments have not picked up. And you can see, take an example of Mombasa. You've seen that there are a lot of infrastructural developments that are being undertaken around Mombasa, including the Dungukundu, bypass, the road,
Mombasa Gate.
Mombasa Gate. I mean, mention it. All these are actually starting to bring in new perspectives in investments. And I believe that going forward, once, let's say, the key infrastructures that are being built in Mombasa are completed, and now they are functioning efficiently, you will see a lot of changes. And what I can also say is that just look at some of the areas where the government put up infrastructure. For example, when Thika Road was put up, have you seen the massive investments that have been done by private sector on the Thika Road corridor? The new estates that came up, because now people can move on a road that has greater capacity.
Yep.
Look at what has happened when Langata Road was expanded up to Bomas. The developments that have been done beyond Langata Road, talk about Ongata Rongai, talk about Kiserian, talk about among many other far-flung areas. Once you increase accessibility, then the private sector jumps in to take advantage of that. Look at what is taking place in Naivasha. People are now talking about Naivasha, the Vasha story. I mean, people are now trying to create elements of value and other business investments around Naivasha. And look at Nakuru, now moving into a city status, and at the same time having a shot in the arm in terms of infrastructural development. I mean, you wouldn't expect it to remain the same. Look at Kisumu. The other day, the government took the Madaraka Day celebrations to Kisumu.
Yes.
And you saw the social media calling Kisumu Europe because because of some of the magnificent infrastructures that have been developed there that now came to the fore, that were now being seen. People were shooting photos and transmitting, saying, look, this is Kisumu. I mean, we didn't expect to find this in Kisumu. So the investments that have been done are actually starting to create new impetus in terms of development, either by the private sector and also the county governments. What governments usually actually do, or what they should do best, because government is not one of the best institutions for doing business, like let's say like constructing shops or running malls. That's the work of private sector. But the government does provide services that are core to facilitating private sector to undertake these investments.
Like security.
Yeah, it's like security, like hospitals, electric power transmission, making sure water is available, making sure that roads are in good shape, and you are able to, if you are talking about the agricultural sector and how it intertwines with the cities, we need to find that we should enable the outlying agricultural land to be serviced by necessary access roads, and so that you can have appropriate farm inputs. You can have appropriate movement of produce from the farms to the consumer gates or to the consumer outlets and to factories, and goods being moved from factories to markets far and beyond.
Sylvester, because I have to let you go in the interest of time.
Correct.
As a country, how then do we take advantage of all investment that we have put in infrastructure to develop our economy, to expand our businesses, and to open new frontiers?
O'Brien, definitely infrastructure being the enabler that we look up to globally is already happening in the country. What we need to do definitely is to create greater facilitation to private sector to continue to generate more investments, and the government to continue to invest in areas that facilitate the economy to grow. I know that there's the issue that has been talked quite a lot about in terms of joblessness. We have quite a lot of people who are jobless, and particularly now with the COVID issue, many people have lost jobs. And people are doing what you usually hear people saying that, my hustle, I'm hustling. So what we need to do as an economy is there to start to create value for these people who are doing small-scale businesses. For example, go to Ngong Road. How many people are parked on roadsides? Go to Jogo Road. The road reserve is fully taken over by Kenyans, and you can't blame them because they are trying to do something. But that is something that is also telling us something about what we need to do. We are seeing that there is some capacity in the local person, in the common man and woman. They are able to do something. What we need to do is to precisely put them in frameworks that allow them to grow.
Yep.
Because we need to industrialize, because that's where we need to be going. Some of these things that the common man and the common woman is doing is actually directing us to start to see that they can actually contribute greatly to our industrialization agenda. I believe that a lot of times, most of these furnitures are imported, isn't it? A lot of times, if you go to good offices, most of the things are imported. But we have, not that we don't have capacity in the economy.
Yes.
For us to produce locally. I mean, we have Congo Forest here supplying us with all the best hardwoods
in the world.
We have many other forests around. We can even continue to create our own timber, yards within the country that can give us all the necessary materials for furnishings. Construction materials shouldn't really be imported.
Yep.
When we are talking about jobless youth, when we are talking about having technical institutions that produce fundis, I mean, we should turn this thing around.
And it's
in my view, it is ripe to turn it around.
This country has the capacity and the ability to become
absolutely
a first world country.
We have no reason to doubt ourselves. We don't even need to do any benchmarking anywhere. Technology is nowadays off shelf. I mean, infrastructure is being built. Some of the reasons why it is said that Africa never industrialized over the last 3 industrial revolutions is because Africa lacked human capacity, technical capacity, that Africa lacked technology, that Africa lacked infrastructure. I mean, we are now building all the infrastructure we need. We actually have
the 3.
Yeah, we have them. And for industrialization to occur, it must ride on infrastructure, it must ride on human capital, it must ride on technology. And technology is now off shelf. It's a global phenomena. And we need to seize the moment. And the masses, if you look at even what India is doing at the moment, India has about 65 million micro and small scale companies.
Yeah.
And which drives about 80% of employment. In Kenya, we have about 7 million, people in the SME sector, in the MSME, and India is saying that they want to increase the share of the MSME sector from 30% to 40% in under 10 years.
Yeah.
So that the economy can grow, because they've realized that is where the people are, that's where the employment is. In fact, MSME sector is the greatest generator of employment. And even in Kenya, our share of MSME in the economy, the GDP, is 40%. But it employs close to 90%
of the entire workforce.
Yes, of the entire workforce. So it therefore means that why do we still look around wondering where to employ our people? We already know where our strength is. We already know where the capacities are. We already know where the materials are. We already know what we need to produce. We already know what we are consuming in the economy, and far and beyond. Let's take it on.
And we can.
And we can.
Very well. Sylvester, thank you very much for finding time to be with us this morning, and of course sharing your insight with us on Newscheck.
Thank you.
Asante sana.
Cheers. Now there's no greetings.
No. I've been talking to Sylvester Kasuku, his immediate CEO of Vision, Lapset, as well as former Transport and Infrastructure Secretary at the Office of the Prime Minister. And our discussion this morning has been around infrastructure and how to take advantage of the expanding infrastructure, how to accelerate infrastructural development in this country. O'Brien Kimani is my name. We are coming up next. And our discussion this morning, coming up next, will be on the extractive industry in this country. It's nascent, it has a huge future, but what do we need to do to tap into the extractive industry? Stay right here. This is Newscheck.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Be sure, check out for a KDIC sticker in your banking hall. KDIC, protecting your deposits.
Hayawi huwa mbiu ya mgambo imelia, na kwa kawaida ikilia kuna jambo.
Mgambo uliopo hapa ni rumba kavacha, odemba na sukus.
Tutakupromoshea midundo motomoto ya Afrika, iwe kutoka kaskazini, kusini, magharibi na hata mashariki.
Rumba is here in your living room.
Na popote ulipo.
This is Bridge of a Congo.
Nzambe ya sambe la kati, ako sambe la nani.
Right here on KBC Channel 1. We.
Nyamazo, usinifanye nijute kwa nini nilikuzaa.
Mimi naota mahali lakini sipajui, lakini hapo mahali kuna sauti.
Mimi na stress zangu mimi mwenyewe. Can you just understand me?
Make me understand. And I knew. Maya.
Utanifanya nini mama? Utanilaani? Utanitoa uhai? Uwezi.
Sooner or later, we will tell the whole world we are Qinqi royals.
You have made our whole family a laughing stock and embarrassed us. Are you so unaware you're a princess?
I see. Attack me when your son's gone.
You can't eliminate Prince Qin just because you want to.
Sorry, Majesty. I was just kidding.
Kidding?
Because the only snowman we need to worry about is the one that you're looking at right here.
Mayor of Miami himself, the Caramel Camacho.
Welcome back. This is Newscheck, and of course we've been discussing issues around infrastructure development. Time now to switch gears and discuss extractive industries. In case you didn't know, Kenya is targeting to reap about 10% of economic growth from the extractive industry, and that's why there is a lot of activities in revamping the regulatory environment to try and bring it up to speed. There is also a lot of research being done to try and understand what lies beneath us. We know there is oil, there is gold, there's titanium, there is coal. But what are we doing to tap into all these resources for economic development? Stephen Mwakesi is a public policy analyst. He's also an extractive industry expert. He's joining us this morning, of course, to help us make sense of all these issues. Thank you so very much indeed, Stephen Mwakesi.
Thank you, Brian.
I want you, first of all, to paint to us the picture of the extractive industry in this country.
Well, the extractive industry in Kenya is one that's been there for quite a while. It's one of the oldest forms of economic activity that we have, and it dates back to pre-colonial period, and that it actually shows from the fact that the mining law that was in place for the longest time was actually enacted in 1940, just 20 years before we even gained independence. So for the extractive sector, it has been something that's been ongoing for a while. We were mining a lot of materials from soda ash to gold. We had quite a thriving industry also in diatomite. So these activities had been going on for quite a while, and only when in 2013, when President Uhuru Kenyatta came in, he found it quite prudent to try and revamp the sector by giving it a standalone ministry. And so the first actions that came about from that point was to relook the licensing regime of the country, see who are the players who are there, people who are active or inactive, and I think at that time is when there was the famous Balala cancellation of licenses, if you can remember.
Yes, I do.
And immediately before that, Balala had also embarked on a very clear mechanism of trying to get a new act in place, because the laws that were in use, like I said, were from 1940. The regime was quite old, so now he came up with a team to try and revamp the mining laws of the country. At the time, I was at the Kenya Chamber of Mines, where I was the CEO, and we worked together with Balala to try and come up with a workable sector law. And God willing, we managed to do a lot of negotiations and discussions. And in 2016, Parliament enacted the Mining Act 2016, which set in place a new mineral regime for the country. The first job then happened at the time there was a new minister in place, Dan Kazungu. He had quite a lot of work to try, and now that we had revamped the legal regime, to set up regulations that would actually help the new act to come into place, and also promote the country out there. And so we embarked on a very vigorous campaign internationally to try and get investors interested with the mining sector, because the ambition that had been set by the president at the time was to try and move the contribution of mining from a low of 0.8% to about 10% in tandem with what the ambitions of Vision 2030 were. And so that went on for quite a while. There were some changes later on when CS Munyes came into place. But one of the critical things that was always on the pipeline, and it's something that was very important for the country, was that we had never done what we call an airborne geophysical survey. This is a mechanism where you utilize planes and things like that to fly over all of the country and find out what are these anomalies that can create an idea for geologists about where to actually focus on and to put money and invest in. And so after a long back and forth, we tried to work with the Chinese on that, and after a while, Cabinet decided that that for this activity, it would be very prudent if we could do it as Kenyans. And so the government then embarked on having a multi-agency task force led by the ministry and the Ministry of Interior. And an airborne survey was started late of 2019 and has been ongoing, and much of the conclusive work is coming to an end by end of this month. And we expect that once that data is released, it will be able to enable people to know what kind of mineralization are we potentially looking at before we carry out extensive ground survey to ensure that whatever we think are anomalies on the ground that might indicate possibly there's probably gold here, there could be potentially diamonds, there could be potentially all manner of minerals, then we would then utilize that to have an idea. Now, the impact of these things has been all across the globe. When you look at Ghana, when you look at, which is a big mining jurisdiction in Africa, when you look at Uganda, countries across Africa have been using airborne geophysical survey to enable them to know and to map what are the potential areas, and even now utilize that to give Kenyans or investors globally an idea of where to actually come in. So for us, this was a very big step. It's also a big step because it was done by Kenyan expertise, and I think it's something that will be very exciting going forward. There are a lot of other challenges that have been there. We've been facing global economic challenges, and there's been very little appetite to invest in new mineral programs all across the globe. But whenever when you are able to demarcate or find an interesting mineral zone, you'll always find money globally out there. So for us, we are just excited that with the new data coming forward, I think the thing that the country needs to do now is to prepare for that moment when now we can be able to invite investors, local and international, to now be able to put some money into the sector so that we see it thrive and grow.
Yes. The whole country is, of course, waiting for that a survey and study that will help investors get to know this is where you have diamond, this is where you have gold, this is where you have oil, and so much. And so I need to direct my investment in this area. But even as we conduct that survey, there are areas that are known to have certain deposits of minerals, and we are talking about, for example, in Turkana, there are huge reservoirs of oil. In Nyanza, there are proven deposits of gold. In Kwale County, there are proven deposits of rare earth minerals. In Kitui County, there are deposits of coal. How comes we have not seen a concerted effort towards tapping these resources, save for Kwale Sands, where you have the titanium, which has now become the biggest mining company in Kenya?
Well, O'Brien, the funniest thing about mining especially is that it goes in stages. One is that you can know that potentially there is gold in Kakamega, there's potentially gold in Siaya, but then before you move from the point of knowing that there are potential gold deposits in these areas to the point of actual mining, it requires a lot of scientific analysis that is done through what we call exploration or prospecting. Now, this is the case also when it comes to oil and gas. Like the country, we have always known there are certain zones that are fully mineralized for having oil potential. We have that in Turkana that has already been identified. We have that in Marsabit. We have that even in Kajiado and Lamu. These are places where we all know that there is oil and gas deposits that can be of potential benefit for the country. However, before any investment in oil and gas or mining is done, there's a lot of time and effort taken to actually carry out this scientific analysis. And for us, it has taken some time because of the up and down of the extractive cycles, especially for around the globe. The changing price of commodities has always had a significant impact on how quickly you can be able to move. Like, for example, when oil was doing well at over $100 a barrel, there was excitement because now oil players had a lot more money that they can choose to invest in exploration or prospecting programs, as opposed to saving that money because it was a boom. Now, when the prices go lower, you'll find more of these companies spending a lot more time developing the current assets that they have instead of investing them on new potential projects like us would happen usually. Now, to give you just an idea of how long sometimes it takes before a program comes into fruition, it took about 20 years before, from the point where we realized we have good deposits of heavy mineral sands in Kwale, to the point of actually being able to mine and actually extract and even ship our first shipment. It was almost 20 years in the making. So in as much as we might have some good announcements that have been made over time with regard to good deposits in the country, whether it is oil, whether it is the gold that we found in Siaya and in Kakamega, the time that it takes before somebody can come and make what we call a final investment decision of setting up and mine and actual extraction is what takes some time. And this is the cycles of this business the world over. It is not unique to Kenya.
Yeah, I mean, it is true that from prospects, to setting up the infrastructure that is needed, of course sourcing for markets, employees and all things, it can take time. But I remember there was a time even Base Titanium was complaining because of slow bureaucracy within the government in the approval process. There was also the politics around the communities and the area, and of course vested interest, and they were saying this was somehow frustrating their efforts in investing in Kwale, and of course it was also making the investment pretty much more expensive than they are used to. And so how do we ensure that we cut down on our politics, we cut down on time that it takes, when it comes to approval processes and so much, in a bit not to frustrate investors and, of course, to entice more investors into the country?
Well, O'Brien, it is the reality of life that minerals live underground and we humans live on the ground. And before an investor can be able to come from wherever country they're coming in to be able to actually get what's underground, they'd have to deal with the people they found on the surface. And so this is one of the realistic dynamics of mining all across the world. Of course, every nation has different aspects around it. There are nations whereby maybe because of military rule and authoritarianism, you are able to move people within a record time of 2 years and clear out an area to be able to carry out mining. But in the case of Kenya, where we have a dynamic society where ideally you're meant to negotiate with people and discuss with them and discuss benefits, our laws are such that they require the participation of the community, because you might get a mining license from the government, but if you do not have the community license to operate, then you will always have problems going forward. And one of the other dynamic things that have always happened, especially in like Kenya, is that some of these minerals are usually found in historically economically marginalized regions. And so you'll find that whenever an announcement of a potential mineral deposit being found, the level of excitement and the level of interest that is drawn from the community is that we are potentially going to be saved from the kind of dark period that we have been over the years. And so it becomes the saving grace, and with it comes a lot of other dynamics. People believe that they can be overnight millionaires in a day without understanding that at times, even as much as it might be said that there are 1 million ounces of gold or 3 million ounces of gold being found, or how many barrels of oil being found in an area, the time it takes before at that point of having made that discovery and actually getting it out of the ground it's long, and during that period there'll have to be a lot of horse trading and negotiation between the communities. For me, what I'm very excited about is that for the country, we've made 2 laws that are very community focused, and this is the Petroleum Act of 2019 and the Mining Act of 2016, whereby communities have really been given a place whereby they can know that the moment activity begins, they become at the center, that they share in the benefits that come out of the mining process, and they are also consulted for any community based or CSR that the company might have, so that they are at the heart of making the decisions that impact on them. Also, some of these numbers have also been saying that we are looking at empowering also the devolved units so that they have a share or a stake in the mining activity and the revenues, so that these revenues actually have a widespread impact at county level to every single person who is affected by the mining activity. So for me, our laws have become robust enough. The question that is there is for the government right now to try as much as possible to engage with communities to the level of not allowing them or being allowed by politicians to politicize the process, so that it doesn't become an issue for a general election. You know, that if I can chokoza these Kenyans a bit, they might see that I'm more sympathetic to them as opposed to my opponent, and thereby by doing that you end up slowing down investment decisions that would have naturally helped everyone if everybody was singing the same voice. So the only way to remedy this, like I've said, is that we've tried to make sure that it does not become political, that one singular person speaks about an issue of extractives that involves the community. The laws insist that you're supposed to bring in as many people as possible representing varied interests. They sit down, they set up a committee that actually looks at how these revenues will be distributed within the entire county, and even how they engage with the potential investor. But for me, I believe if we are able to keep politics at the minimum, if the economic environment is such that allows investors to come in freely without having fear about whether the licenses that are being given are able to withstand the test of time, I think we might be able to see mining take off quite easily. I think the only other challenge that you raised on the issue of base titanium and also renewals of licenses, there was a period whereby, truth be told, licensing became a very big issue. It is a big issue even as we speak right now. The ease of acquisition of licenses is still a bit more problematic, but the ministry has been very forthcoming in stating that it will put every effort to try and make sure licensing resumes, because towards the end of 2019, the government put a moratorium on issuance of new licenses in the country, and I think that has greatly impacted the ability of people to get renewals. But going forward, I foresee with the release of this airborne data survey, we might be able to see licensing resume within the country. The other dynamics, of course, of having license holders who are absentees or who are holding up area that could potentially be good for the country while not developing the assets, that's something that also needs to be addressed, because we've had a lot of cowboy investors who are holding licenses but not developing them, and this ends up making the country not benefit from this, and it's been an issue when it comes to the oil and gas licensing regime as well as the mining licensing regime.
I remember, and I want to take you back to the year around 2012, 2013, 2014 there was a lot of excitement that after huge deposits of rare earth minerals were discovered around Shimba Hills.
Yes. And
Chinese investors were lining up to try and exploit those resources, and rare earth minerals have become the hottest minerals in the world because of their value in the construction of various things, from computer chips to missiles and so much. Then all of a sudden, there was a lot of quietness. What happened?
Well, Brian, what happened is that during the 2012 period, there was an investor from Australia who had acquired a license, but on analysis post 2013 of how the license was acquired, they were found that there were some issues which were not quite rightly done. and at the heart of it, since now it's already matters that have been arbitrated on, those lack of appropriate licensing from the various entities that are meant to license. Mrima Hill area is a sanctuary that is a forest sanctuary, and there were a lot of approvals that were required both from the Forest Service, NEMA, and things like that. But at the time, the license was issued without getting the necessary approvals, and at the time, Balala went ahead to just make a new statement that that license would be revoked. It then went on to a court process, which then got escalated to international arbitration. Luckily for us, because I was with the ministry at the time as an advisor to the cabinet secretary, we were able to put up a good case on behalf of Kenya, and we won the international arbitration. And with that, then the area became available for Kenya now to be able to present to the world. This is what has just recently been advanced, because there's an appeal to the arbitration award that was done for Kenya. But looking forward, I believe rare earths deposits still portend to have the biggest potential to bring great revenue to the country. But at the moment, the level of activity on rare earth minerals has really dwindled. There's some activity in Mozambique and countries and Burundi and Tanzania, but for the interest that is coming to Kenya has been quite low at the moment, because everybody needed to know that we have finished up with all the cases that involved that Mrima Hills sanctuary. We also have additional deposits of rare earths in Homa Bay and also in Kericho, and all these investors are looking towards and are assessing. The potential that this will have for the country is quite big, because I think there is no item that we use right now that does not contain an element of rare earth elements. We have one of the largest deposits of niobium in the whole world. Actually, it's one of the third largest reserves for rare earths. So for outside of China. So I think that is something that we could potentially look into. But of course, it will require a lot of goodwill from government. Investors sometimes get very wary of an investment destination if they find that there are some things that are making people not be able to thrive as much. And like I said, one of the issues was, of course, licensing. But now that we are moving towards streamlining the licensing regime, then we potentially might be able to get the attention of mining investors who can now then look at the Mrima Hill project and redevelop it. What I do know President Ruto has been very passionate about is that for such a great asset, the country or the state has to be at the heart of it, so that it just doesn't become something that profiteers make money out of and Kenyans end up losing in the end. So I know there is a very elaborate plan to make sure that in the moment that we try and monetize on this particular asset such as Mrima, the state will be at the heart of those negotiations, so that we have a productive revenue share with the potential investors or the people who will be coming to mine that particular asset. Yeah.
And well, let's hope that the issues around these will be resolved, so that the country can start tapping into these resources. And also on the issue of oil, I know global prices have somehow plunged, but is there any hope for oil going forward?
I'm very optimistic about oil. I know that we had a situation whereby globally there was a slowdown on investments and some of these new projects which are coming from Africa. But this is slowly changing over time. And during that period when we were considering waiting for the investor, this is Talo and the other investment partners, to make a decision on whether they can be able to proceed with investing in Kenya, the country and the ministry has been working very hard to try and de-risk some of the issues that investors and the concerns that they had in terms of the pipeline, ensuring that land access is available, that there's access to water and things like that, and we've done quite a good job on that. I know towards the end of this year Tala will be making a final investment decision on how to proceed on this particular thing after carrying out a successful early oil program, EOPS, that was done towards the end of last year. So for me, I'm very bullish and optimistic about us being able to take to actually exploit this particular resource. But ideally, again, I still believe we need to, as a country, show that we have a bigger plan, because we are competing with another country like Uganda, which has found an exit route for its oil. So the viability of some of the investments we are making at the north came into question. But there are already plans to look at having a refinery in Lamu, which could be something that could probably change the game for the country. There have been also interest by a number of investors to try and set up refinery points across the country, so that the moment we extract this oil, we will not just be just a net exporter, but also we can find a way we can work with our East African partners to make sure that some of this oil works for us. It's a long shot, as some people say, but it's better when we are thinking that broadly and that large. And for me, I still believe that we will have this Turkana oil become something that we can be able to utilize for the future. There's still some ongoing activity and interest from investors on the offshore basis, and also there's a lot of onshore activity around Mandera area and things like that. So I still see that we will be able to take to become a serious oil producer going forward. The only challenge, of course, when you look at the way the world is going, is that a lot of international money is moving away from carbon-based investments, and that is things like oil and coal and things like that, towards more renewable energy, using more of electricity. We are even just recently being told that we were about to get a 10 billion fund just for geothermal development. I mean, much of the international finance organizations are moving away from oil, so as other investors, but I still believe it's about 1-2 more decades we have with the oil being still at the center of our development agenda, especially for Africa. So there might be some still good viability. Whether the pricing will support such investment is where the question comes about, because again, we need to have certain global prices to make some of the investments look viable. The moment we keep dropping below $50 barrel of oil, some of these investment decisions look very tight, and it's hard to foresee.
And when you look at global fuel prices in the last 3 years, you have seen prices have dropped by more than 40%, 45%. And Kenya was hoping that it was hoping to ride on the oil boom of 2014, 2012, 2013, 2014, in order to attract more investors in its nascent oil industry. But this has not happened, and this is casting a serious doubt on the future of oil billions going forward. Do you think we still have a case?
We might still have a case. I mean, the commodity cycle boom and the way it has been going up and down, there might be a case for it. There are projections which still show that there'll still be demand for oil going forward. China is still a big consumer of oil and a big buyer of oil across the globe. So I do not foresee us having a problem with that. The problem is whether we can maintain price points that actually make sense. I know we've argued as a country that anything above $50 per barrel will still make a business case for Kenya, but at times these prices have been seen to dip quite low, and it has a significant impact on a lot of these activities. The other issue is that we also would have to look for creative ways of even financing and keeping it quite affordable for anyone who individuals coming in to make an investment in the long term. The bigger problem comes in when of course this is how the oil contracting has been done, that you begin to have revenues as the moment the first oil starts to trickle out. But there are mechanisms in which a country can agree with the investors to try and see how do we keep it viable over the long term, and then we figure out how some of the benefits that come out of that can be kept in a long-term framework, such as sovereign wealth funds and things like that, so that we do not seem to be very eager to dip into the jar much earlier than if we could let some time pass by. Of course, these dynamics are very difficult to argue to Mwananchi, who is saying that oil will be flowing, but these are the dynamics that can be put in place. I'm still a believer that we will still have some high oil prices, but I do not think I can project beyond the next decade that we can maintain such pricing. There's a lot of competition from shale oil, which is coming from the US, which is now it's become a significant producer of oil at quite a lower price than the traditional oil mining like we have seen here in Kenya. And also the advancement in technology might also make some of the utilization of some of these fuels redundant with time. But the only thing is just to be optimistic. I still see that we can have a decade or two of good oil production for the country before we see what the global dynamics will do.
As we wind up quickly, let's also discuss the issues around COVID-19 and the impact they're having on the mining industry, of course, and the slow demand for minerals, has somehow led to downsizing and, of course, right-sizing. Have we felt this impact here in Kenya?
Indeed, the impact has been quite significant in the country. In fact, one case in point is what is happening in Tata Chemicals Magadi, where they are opting to really significantly downsize its workforce because commodities are not what they used to be before. Soda ash, for example, which is being produced by Tata Chemicals Magadi, is now facing stiff competition from synthetic producers, and the advancement in technology sometimes renders some of these natural occurring commodities to face stiff competition. Kenya Fluorspar had to shut down operations because it could not compete with the cheaper options that were out there for Fluorspar, and there are a lot of other dynamics that are coming into play because sometimes also to keep some mining operations going when there is not much activity, there's a big impact which is affecting, for example, the small-scale mines for gemstones within Taita Taveta region, also within Migori, because some of these buyers, one, were limited in the amount of travel that they could do. Two, even the pricing was not as good as possible because people, global investors out there, are saving more rather than spending on things that would actually be luxury brands and things like that. So there has been a significant impact. There are other commodities which are doing quite well. Iron ore is doing quite well globally because of demand from China. So in some segments there is a boom, and in some segments there is a complete drop in terms of pricing, and it has affected people negatively. For me, I think for going forward, I think it's important that mining investors, mining business owners can be able to foresee some of these situations, plan for them, and create mechanisms of actually being able to put people back in work. For me, I've seen some of the mechanisms that were put in place to enable mining investors save a lot of money in terms of taxation have been clawed back in the latest budget that was presented in Parliament. And this is not the moment whereby we should be doing things like this. We should be now making it much easier for people to get equipment in, to be able to, so that we create a revitalization of the sector, considering how much of a dull moment that COVID has taken us. So these are the things that I propose that the government considers doing, and we look at some of this productive, because mining is a productive sector, and the more we invest in it, the more we allow money to easily flow to such a sector, the more jobs we see being created, the more value, the more foreign exchange. And I think one of the biggest foreign exchange earners for the country right now is the Kwale Mineral Sands project. So if we can see ourselves really promoting some of these businesses and allowing them to thrive, and opening up new opportunities, because there are opportunities all across the country. These are the things that we might see happen for the goodwill of the country.
Very good. Stephen, in the interest of time, we have to come to the end of this discussion.
Thank you for having
very
me.
much indeed for your insight.
Thank you very much, O'Brien.
We look forward to having you again in the future.
Thank you, Kenya. Thank you.
We've been discussing the extractive industry and what we need to do to boost our revenues from this critical sector. You have heard it all from the experts, and of course earlier on we were discussing how to expand and of course accelerate infrastructural development here in Kenya, and how to tap into the opportunities that come by. Well, my name is O'Brien Kimani. It can't get better than this. Remember, Kurunzi Mashinani is coming up next. From me and the rest of the business team, have a good morning. Well, actually, it's good afternoon.